We have our own David Lyle.
All right.
So these are our daughters. Oh, these are our daughters. Mary on the left. You know what I mean. Mary and Frances. And I want to tell you how they came to be born. So Doug Murray and I have been a couple for 24 years, and that whole time I've been a family lawyer. That means I do divorces and adoptions and help people do parenting plans. And I've always been very conscious of the irony that it's my job to help other couples access privileges that are not available to couples like Doug and me in Tennessee. We've gotten married and we've had children, but neither major event happened in Tennessee. In 2006, we went to Canada and got married. Mainly though, life together has been a quiet, gay scene involving cats and a live-in mother-in-law, my dear sweet mother-in-law, Mary Lee. And that's us all together in the house. She lived with us for the last 5 years of her life. And she died knowing that we were expecting her first grandchildren, but 5 months before they were born. Also in 2006, we started, the year of the marriage, a 2-year odyssey trying to adopt a needy child in Tennessee through the public system, the Child Protective Services system. And here we are with one of the 4 foster kids who lived in our home over the course of those 2 years. We had to attend a 40-hour parenting class. It was a foster to adopt class taught by the Department of Children's Services. There were about 30 couples in that class, and the state slow-walked everything about us and our application. In fact, we were wondering why, we had finished the class weeks and weeks before, but the home study hadn't been finished and signed off on. And wondering why that was, when finally the case workers came to the house for the final interview. Now these case workers had taught the class, so they had already known us for like 3 or 4 months. But they finally got permission to go and do the final interview. And they walked in, they knew us, and they were very cheery, and they said, "Oh, Susan and Joe, we just made a permanent placement in their home last week. Isn't that awesome?" And I thought, yeah, that's awesome. And we're finally birthing our home study here. And in fact, so that's pretty much how it went. And over the course of the next year and a half, there was no permanent placement or likely or potential permanent placement in our home. So we finally gave up on adopting a needy child in Tennessee, and we decided to take matters into our own hands. And we decided we were going to get a donor for eggs, fertilize them with our own sperm in vitro, and we would find some awesome woman who would agree to carry the resulting embryo for us. I did the legal research, and sure enough, Tennessee is a horrible place for a same-sex couple to try to have a kid through, assisted fertility. And in fact, there's a law on the books that says Tennessee won't enforce or honor any surrogacy agreement unless the intended parents are a straight married couple. So my research did say that California is the place you want to be, because in California, the law really respects the intent of the parties, of everyone involved, including the gestational carrier and the egg donor, who most often are not the same person. So we connected with a woman named Amanda, who became our egg donor, and that was through an agency that we worked with in California. And it was really successful. It was terrific. 18 eggs. So, and we also found a really awesome gestational carrier who agreed to work with us, and her name is Suzanne. Here we are with Suzanne and her daughter and her 2 stepdaughters. Now, she's really a fantastic person, very kind and responsible and caring. She had born her own child and had also carried to term a baby for a European couple. So she had lots of experience with pregnancies, and since we had none, this was very comforting to us. And even though our babies couldn't be conceived in Tennessee, the event of retrieving sperm cells to make the babies did happen here. And then we put the concentrated gametes in a glass tube and lowered the tube into this kind of very, talk about intervention, is a very mechanical object that kind of looked like an upright stainless steel torpedo. Put the glass tube in this metal rod and you lower the rod into... And the torpedo is full of dry ice, and it instantly flash freezes the specimen. And then we put the torpedo out on the front porch and called up the UPS guy, and he came and picked it up, and he hauled it for us to California. Now, by then, we had already been to California more than once, trying to make our babies happen, not least of which, I think, this was probably at least the second time we had gotten together with Suzanne. And we knew that coming up there were going to be many more trips to California. A lot of trips for us to make ourselves, not just send torpedoes. And so we divided those up between us, intending that one of us would always be home to help take care of Mary Lee, who was very elderly, as you could see, and had mild dementia. It was great. She always knew who we were. She remembered, boy, did she remember that there were babies going to come live in the house. But she needed someone in the home. So the clinic did its in vitro thing and said that if they got a good embryo that they could transfer to Suzanne's womb, it would be on November 14, 2009. And Suzanne was fantastic, and she said it was cool with her if one or both of us was present in the room during the transfer. So, because we wanted to be present and be part of the process, and I was thinking all the time, boy, it'd be awesome to be at the birth. This would be terrific. And so I went out to California. That one fell to me. So here I am visiting with Suzanne in the clinic. This was just minutes after the transfer. So we were all doing this, crossing everything we could think of. And at this point, we had to make a decision in that day, that morning, because at this point, out of 18 original eggs, there were just 2 viable embryos, the doctor was telling us. And he really wanted to transfer both of them. And and he explained that the reason is if he transferred just one, then there was really, at best, a 50-50 chance of pregnancy, maybe even less, 25%. And also, since there was just one other embryo left over, if he froze it, then there'd probably, and later we wanted to try to use it, probably be less than 50-50 that it would remain viable. But if he transferred both, there was a 70% chance of a singleton, which is what we all wanted, yay! But there'd also be a 15% chance of twins. So we all talked we got Doug on the phone, we all talked, and Suzanne very bravely, and she really wanted this to work too, so we all agreed that we would transfer both embryos. And then I crossed all my fingers and got on the plane and flew home to Tennessee. Well, 3 days later, Suzanne called me up on the phone. I think she did reach me because I remember this conversation so vividly. And she said, "It is twins. I promise." She said, "I just did a pregnancy test. You know, the one where you take a jar of pee and you put a stick in it, and man, it went flash from pink to blue. I mean, I've never, I've done a lot of these tests," she said, "and I've never seen it turn this blue before." So she knew that something was really pumping out the hormones there. So sure enough, at 1 week after the transfer, they did an ultrasound, and there were both embryos. So we were, it was awesome, but kind of nerve-wracking. But Suzanne was excited too, and we were all on board. She was really delighted at about 3 months to share this picture of a baby bump. And last night when I was preparing this for the first time, the girls saw this picture, and they said, "Oh, that lady's pregnant." I said, "Yes, dear, that's you and Sissy inside there." And one detail that eluded us, however, was exactly when we should be in California for the birth of these two little babies in there. By our calculation, the full term would be August 9. So Doug flew out with Suzanne just about the time of that picture, the previous picture, for a visit with Suzanne's obstetrician, a terrific female doctor that she'd worked with on her own at the birth of her own child. So this was someone she really trusted. And so this picture was taken on February 17, 2010, while Doug and Suzanne were waiting at the clinic to see the obstetrician. And I had told him very specifically, ask the obstetrician when these babies are going to come. And after the appointment, he went straight to the airport and landed in Nashville late that night. So I went out to the airport to meet him. And I met him I went inside and I met him at the security. And I had him sit down. And I gave him the news that his mother had died about 2 hours earlier. So while he was in the plane on the way home, and we forgot to talk about a lot of the details of the visit with the obstetrician, and including, I don't remember ever a specific report back on that due date. And I thought, well, we still have time, we'll worry with it later. But we did, we went on with life, and we buried his mama, and we carried on. And a month before the August 9 due date was, so that would be the week of July 4. And Doug was scheduled, he had an important professional conference to be gone the whole week in Washington, D.C. for this conference. And so in our planning, I said, well, you go ahead and go to that conference, and when you get home, we'll get on a plane and we'll fly out to California so we can be there 3 weeks early for the birth of the girls. And we didn't know that for twins, 8 months is full term, not 9. And sure enough, the babies were getting really big, and Suzanne kept saying, Mary, because we'd already named baby A Mary, is not turning. She's really, really stubborn, I can tell, and her head's up here, and she keeps pushing her sister up here, and I can tell she's not going to turn. And meanwhile, Suzanne was having all these Braxton Hicks contractions. They were making her really uncomfortable, and she was worried about them, and the doctor was giving her meds to try to control those, and no babies turning, and stubborn children, and on July 7, she telephoned me in the morning and said that she'd be visiting her obstetrician that day for a regular visit, and that she probably would get an increase in dose of the medication to control those Braxton Hicks. And so off she went to the appointment. Well, she got there, and the doctor checked her out and said, you know what, these babies are getting really big, and neither baby has turned, and neither baby's going to turn, and they're almost so big now that it's going to be very hard for this first baby to turn, and the Braxton Hicks are getting out of control. These babies are going to be born in 3 hours. Okay. 1 o'clock this afternoon, we're going in, we're going to do and deliver these babies, and we don't want an emergency on our hands, and it's going to be a C-section. So Suzanne took a big, swallowed hard, and pulled out her cell phone and gave me a call. And after that call, I rang up the airline and packed a bag and slept for a few hours and got up at 4:30 the next morning, hopped on for a 6 in the morning departure, And the flight was almost 5 hours long, with a change in Denver, and then finally got to Sacramento, and got the rental car, and jumped in the car, and drove through strange cities to the hospital, and got there and convinced security to please let me into the maternity ward. And I will say it was really tight, which I'm all for. I understand the need for that. And so I finally got in and wandered around the ward looking for Suzanne's room, and so I finally find the room, and I walked in, and it turns out Suzanne wasn't there. Her bed was empty. She was down the hall. Later I learned for some checkup. And but there, excuse me, in a wheeled bassinet, I found 2 little wood nymphs swathed in blankets, touching noses. And then a nurse walked in and demanded to know who I was. And I told her, and she said, "Well, it's about time. We've been wondering when you'd get here." And I said, "Well, I'm here now, and I want to hold these babies." On the upside, the hospital did have a room right next to Suzanne's, reserved for us, for the intended parents. And so Suzanne, when she came back, in fact, she visited with her, and then we wheeled the bassinet over to this room so I could be there to parent them and connect. They stayed with me in my room. I will say the nurses were great. They treated me just like they would any new mother of twins, and so they did not expect me to keep the babies in my room during the night. They kind of insisted, with 2, you don't need to be feeding both of them alone every 2 hours, so let's put them in the nursery overnight. But otherwise, they were always with me for the next 2 days while the nurses trained me just like they would any new mom. And they showed me how to feed the babies and change the babies and swaddle the babies. And after that, Doug, it was about, the conference was over, and Doug came out to California, and we took our babies to an apartment he had found on Craigslist. And there, we put the babies in a drawer, like you do, to carry them from room to room safely, so we could have them by our bed at night and carry them, set them in the living room during the day. And every couple of days, we packed them up in car seats and paid a call on Suzanne, who was recovering from surgery, Jeremy, at home, and doing pretty well. And for 3 weeks, we did that and had an occasional picnic. But mainly, we stayed home and admired our babies. Until it was the last time we thought we took them to a couple of postnatal, their first 2 pediatric visits in California, and confirmed that their eustachian tubes looked okay, and so they were doing well. And basically, we didn't make the decision as their parents that we felt comfortable flying with them, so we could take them home to their real home in Tennessee. And here we are at the airport waiting for the plane. When we got aboard, it seemed full of really nosy women who wanted to know who the real father of each baby was. And we just smiled and said, "These babies are the result of our marriage, and they have 2 fathers. They have 2 real daddies." But that's another try my best. When I see pictures of Mary and Francis together like this, I think of the first time I saw them in that bassinet. Lying side by side, nose to nose, and getting along so well. Never squabbling, no arguments. And I think of the nurse who said, "Well, it's about time. We've been wondering where you were." And sometimes I have fantasized that I should have said, "We have spent 4 years trying to get here to this. I've been working on this for 4 years to get into this room, and we froze a specimen and then shipped it off to California, and we tried foster care. We've had 40 hours of parenting class, which is more than most, 40 more than most other parents. And we've had a home study, and these kids' grandmother grew old and died a few months before she had a chance to see her only grandchildren. We didn't know they'd be born in 8 months instead of 9. I didn't have the information. We spent every last nickel of our home equity bringing these babies into the world. And in any case, I'm here now, so get off my back. I'm trying my best. But that's not how life really is it? As the poet said, experience is for the past. And the moment is for now. And so I'm really glad that I just said, I'm here now, and I'm going to hold these babies.
Happy Mother's Day.